26 December 1944, the Assenois Bastogne corridor, Belgium. Ice rims the road signs. The military police have just swung around. Arrows now point north, not home. CCB 4th Armoured pushes through black intersections, belly lights cutting bands of slush, while wipers scrape frozen grit from glass. Keep the road. No halts. The order falls short over the net and repeats, clipped under the engine thunder of GMCs, stacked with 105mm shells and jerrycans, riding tight behind the Shermans. In the lead tank, First Lieutenant Charles Bogus steadies Cobra King. TAC steady 75, pointed at the gate of Assenois, where German anti-tank guns crouch behind dark hedges. The first shot hammers blows timber into the snow. The turret snaps back, a hot casing skitters underfoot. Cobra King grinds through the fence, the coax cuts a short stitch along a stone wall. German infantry blink at the roar on a street they believed was locked by sighted guns. Past the edge of the village, a figure in netted helmet steps into the wind and throws up a hand, an engineer from the 101st. One flat sentence on the radio, Bastogne reached. The shock lands late. A pack gun flares from a dug lip, the tracer rakes across. A half-track takes it and blooms, a tire bursting, slaps the frame, men bail into fuel-rich smoke. The 101st Artillery begins to correct by the grid the corridor just opened. Dry clicks of breech blocks, hard concussions marking a passage as tight as a drawn wire. On the Mageret spur, another armoured point tries the low village and meets a cutting crossfire. The commander's voice goes raw, and the column turns. The MPs stand in the north wind gloves, salted white swing, the priority board and shove the flow to the rerouted lane. Next, serial rolls, lamps dim in snow. No cheers. Only engines keeping time and one horse line on the net corridor narrow. Hold the road. Then a heavy silence grips the strip of road they just forced open. By 19 December 1944, the Ardennes had become a ledger of choke points. Third Army under George Patton pivoted north inside a day, pushing railheads to Arlon and Neufchâteau, handing the military police a simple mandate: flip the arrows, give the road to Bastogne. The mission was stripped to essentials before ammunition, fuel and bandages at Bastogne ran out. Build a breathing corridor with rhythm so the 101st Airborne under Anthony McAuliffe could keep the road junction alive. Troy Middleton at 8th Corps held the wider shell. Hugh Gaffey drove 4th Armoured straight through frozen villages where every lane could be an anti-tank ambush. Across the line, Hasso von Manteuffel trusted the siege formula. Snow, darkness and poor visibility would choke American resupply at each neck in the road. Heinrich Kokott tightened his Volksgrenadiers around the town. Fritz Bayerlein scattered Panzer Lehr roadblocks along the likely feeders. The logic was sound: if a convoy paused for minutes before a well-sighted gun, the pocket would close itself by starvation. Weather reinforced that confidence. When the sky shut, American air went quiet, and the war moved onto the pavement. The Americans treated victory as a timetable. Serial convoys were numbered, step-off times fixed. Engineer companies scraped ice in front of the flow core. Artillery timed protective fires over the nodes, and the MPs turned every crossroads into a valve. 4th Armoured did not only punch a hole, it kept cadence, so GMCs loaded with 105mm shells and fuel could pour through. When the ceiling lifted, XIX Tactical Air Command clawed at exposed roadblocks, but the core wager remained the road itself. If one spearhead was pinned, the stream had to reroute instantly to a prepared spur, never letting the throughput drop to zero. This is not a tale of one tank touching hands and shouting. It is a trial of two beliefs: that encirclement makes an enemy starve versus a method that treats each intersection as a field factory. If the corridor failed at any junction, Bastogne would revert to a sealed pocket and 5th Panzer Army would buy time. If the corridor held tempo by flipping a few signs at the right minute, Germany's hunger deterrent collapsed. The distance between those outcomes was a short halt or a gloved hand on a wooden board, go no stops, right turn. Every painted arrow added an hour of life to the town. The window is narrow and exact. 1929, December 1944, the roads feeding Bastogne. What made the reroutes lethal was not a slogan, but a chain of acts that never let the wheels stop. Third Army's pivot order on 19 December rolled through the system in hours. Railheads shoved to Arlon a priority list, issued serial convoys numbered with step-off times, and every critical node handed to the MPs like a valve. Engineer platoons preceded the flow with dozers and sand-cutting new edges into frozen lanes. Corps artillery matched their fires to the timetable, so a crossroads could be covered for minutes, not hours. From a driver's seat, that meant one thing: keep the speed above a crawl, keep the clock from ever reading 2 minutes at zero. The German kill mechanism was simple and honest. Anti-tank guns sighted to rake the mouth of a village, Panzerfaust teams crouched behind low walls, trees felled to force a halt under pre-registered tubes. In darkness and blowing snow, a convoy that paused would be heard, found, and struck. The pocket starves itself logic depended on that pause. The American counter-mechanism spoke in procedures the crews could feel. At a node, the MP raised a board. Assenois first no, halts left spur cold, and the column compressed to punch through the covered window. Corps guns fired a short, hard Patton. 3 concussions close enough to rattle doors told the driver the umbrella was open. If a wreck blocked half the lane, a dozer snapped forward, pushed hot metal into the ditch, and left a single track wide enough for a GMC. The driver felt stones drum the floor and gasoline bite the nose, but the wheels rolled, and that difference was life. Armour opened the door, then gave it away. A lead tank took the first exchange at the village mouth, smashed the nearest gun, or at least soaked the enemy's attention, then edged out so trucks could pass instead of clustering behind its hull. The point was not to plant a flag, but to maintain throughput greater than zero, because zero was when pre-sighted fire, nerves and cold did their work for the defender. Assenois at 1650 proves the pattern. The gate breaks, contact is made with the 101st, and within moments, a pack gun lights a half-track and tries to turn the lane into a funeral pyre. Under a short artillery cover, a dozer shoves the burning mass to the verge. The MP swings the board. The next serial rumbles through with mirrors grazing the hedge. Minutes later on, the Mageret spur, an armoured feeler, runs into a crossfire in a low village. The commander horse orders back. The MPs, already warned on the net, flip the arrows to the prepared branch. Drivers see the sign, hear a clipped Reroute Red, no halts, and obey. The corridor does not freeze. German guns never get the long look. Translated into survival, if the clock stays above zero, anti-tank eyes never settle, artillery solutions expire, and the town breathes again. If the clock hits 2 minutes at a node, the pocket begins to starve. This isn't fortune, it's traffic control under fire. The north wind lashes the black trees as a 26th Volksgrenadier Park crew changes the watch. The gunner sets his eye to an optic filmed with ice and breathes in the cold, the grease in the mechanism turned to wax on his fingers. They know the script by heart, wait for the American engines to slacken at the village mouth, make the wheels stop where the coordinates are measured, then cut the lead under machine gun fire and a ripple of Panzerfaust from the corners. In the section leader's head, time falls into beats. 2 minutes halted is enough to call artillery onto the choke. Across the lane, a Panzerfaust man hunches below a broken window, the wind running a knife down his salted collar. The engines arrive early. Not the stutter of a convoy braking, but a kept cadence, as if someone is counting in their ears. Belly lights smear slush along the stone wall. The order drops clean in the wind, Feuer bereit. The gunner trims the coarse reticle, but sleet has scratched the glass. The first shape in the sight is already past the perfect aim point. A flash answers from a head timber, and breath burst into the air. The enemy turret bucks a coax, stitches a short line toward the courtyard gate. The Panzerfaust man lifts inhales, and then the street booms like a drum. 3 even blasts so near that the snow dust jumps from the steps. American artillery is covering the road, someone mutters through numbed teeth. At the head of the column, First Lieutenant Charles Bogus braces in Cobra King's turret eye sunk into a pale green sight. Identify, acquire, fire, relocate. A hot casing spins under his boot. The smell of burnt paint rides damp oil. The radio crackles through sleet, a hoarse word from Abrams on the battalion net, then hush. Bogus taps the loader's shoulder, slews the hull half a lane, and yields road face to the GMCs, pressing tight behind. Door open. Trucks through, he says, flat as reading a list. In a GMC cab, the driver's split hands clamp the wheel until sinews stand. The wipers rasp dry on rime-hard glass. He hears 3 more close detonations, 101st guns firing on the grid they've just opened, and knows that is the minute to push. The escort in the passenger seat hugs a crate of 105mm eyes fixed on the wooden board. In an MP's fist at the crossroads, the red arrow for Assenois flips at the exact second. The truck set's radio throws one clipped line, no halts, left spur cold. Push the flow. At the node, an MP stands in white wind gloves crusted with salt. He grips the priority board eyes, cutting between the smear of headlights and the black of the hedges. No halts, he repeats, as each truck crawls past a hand-carving tempo into the air. When the net says crossfire Mageret, he swings the board to the reserve spur and makes his voice a blade. Reroute Red. Keep moving. No pep talk. No speech. Every flip is a vein opened. At the village mouth, a dozer's blade bites the burning carcass of a half-track metal, screaming. Sparks spray across white ice and burst on a trunk. The operator hunches against the heat, shoves the red mass to the verge and leaves a single vehicle lane. A GMC behind shudders over stones that drum the floor. Raw gasoline stings the nose. Go, 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 a dry voice urges through a frozen window seam. The pack crew snaps the catch, breaks the shot. Fire lashes sideways, a tracer cuts the profile of a moving box. A truck in the second rank blooms and then is shouldered into the ditch by the dozer's blade. The section leader yells, "Change position," but a coax rakes the wall and chalk dust rains down bullets, knocking a bright rhythm on iron rail. The Panzerfaust man drops his tube and runs doubled into a garden, feeling the American cadence hold, never sliding into the golden pause. In Boggis's turret, the radio opens again. Assenois gate open, trucks through armour, step back. He nods, edges the hull offline, and catches a glimpse of a netted helmet from the 101st, throwing up a hand in the wind. No cheering, only checklists. Relocate, he says, and the turret glides a notch, the gun swinging to hunt a second muzzle flash. On the Mageret spur, an armoured feeler slips down into a low village. The engines pour and then check as a crisscross of fire shuts the street. The commander's voice goes raw, back, back. MPs at the previous node have the call. The board turns, the red arrow points to the prepared branch. A resupply serial sees the sign and turns, while the front wheels are still humming on ice. No one talks. Headlights dull in snow engines keep a pulse like a heart machine. In the 101st Fire Direction bunker, a lieutenant reads out the grid update. Time on target, 2 minutes fire. Breech blocks click dry. 3 shocks slam against a GMC's glass a few hundred meters away. The driver tightens his jaw, keeps 15 on the dial, never looking away from the MP's board. He knows the unwritten rule: if the wheels still turn, anti-tank eyes don't settle. If the clock hits 2 minutes halted, the shells arrive. German crews fall back along the tree line, hauling the gun to a secondary cut. The section leader feels the script slip from his hands, no pause, no golden minute to call tubes to swallow the neck. He signals hush and listens to the American engines recede without breaking time. At the row's end, the smell of oil and hot iron settles onto the snow like a dark dust. The American stream keeps breathing. Fourth, armoured slides aside, GMCs pour like water through a tight pipe. On the net, only cold fragments remain. Corridor, narrow. Hold the road, and the wind runs down the corridor they've forced, carrying a silence heavy as steel, while men on both sides understand the same thing. Tonight the road will not stand still. Third Army's pivot order on 19 December moved through the chain in hours, turning the Arlon-Neufchâteau-Assenois-Bastogne map into a timetable. George S. Patton fixed the priority, open a breathing road for Bastogne before ammunition, fuel and bandages hit bottom. Troy Middleton built the outer frame so the corridor could exist without the relief thrust becoming a lone charge. Hugh Gaffey tasked 4th Armoured to punch the Assenois gate, but the aim was not to plant a flag. The aim was to create a flow that could be sustained through a snow night. Creighton Abrams kept the clock for the 37th Tank Battalion. The lead tank opens the door, then edges off to give the lane to GMCs, then shifts to a secondary firing position. Anthony McAuliffe synchronized the 101st's fire grid, so the artillery umbrella opened and closed by the minute. Behind them, ComZ, quartermaster companies and the MPs shoved the railhead to Arlen, issued a serial schedule and set up traffic control posts at the nodes. The Americans wagered on what they could control time. Every convoy was a serial with an identifier, a step-off, and a priority order 105mm shells, fuel medical. The directives read like assembly line cards at the MP node, a red-painted board and a clipped line. No halts. Assenois first. Reroute Red on call. Up front, engineers with dozers moved with the armoured point. When a burning hulk blocked the centre line, the blade shoved it to the verge in 30 or 40 seconds, leaving a one-vehicle lane. In the 101st's FDC time on target, 2 minutes fire, turned artillery into a moving canopy that opened exactly when the column slipped through. All of it collapsed to a survival standard the driver could feel. In the hands, the risk threshold was 120 seconds halted. Beyond that, German artillery would arrive. The Germans could not replicate. At each node, their kill mechanism was clear and effective. A Pak-75 raking the village mouth, 2 Panzerfaust teams at the corners, an MG locking the alley with a pre-registered battery waiting for the choke. But everything hung on a pause. If American wheels did not stop, if the corridor held 10 to 15 kilometers an hour, the gunner lost his eye, the battery's solution aged out, the advantage of the roadblock thinned itself. And when German crews tried to shift for a second angle, they ran into their own bottlenecks of manpower and fuel. Towing a gun cost petrol, moving a post cost time. Infantry burned out in wind and ice. The American risk was real. A burning truck became an obstacle. Ice snapped cadence, sleet grounded aircraft. They accepted the risk because they knew how to pay for it. Lose a slot in a serial, the next slot fills it. Lose a prime mover, another vehicle drags the wreck off the crown. Lose a minute to a surprise muzzle, the MP flips the board and diverts the stream to the pre-briefed spur in the net. The system was designed without a single point failure. Standardized parts and tools made roadside fixes a matter of minutes, swap a lamp belt or hose at the verge. The column drove in, blackout march, discipline, cut friction at each node. TCP maps went into drivers' hands, so when the radio choked on sleet, a wooden arrow still ruled. In that short score, 4th Armoured kept the beat. The lead tank was forbidden to become the choke. Break the door, give the lane shift fire was a 3-step loop. It sounded simple. It felt cold, the turret kicked back. A hot casing skittered under a boot. The gun swung off the centre to let a crate of 105mm flash past the track. Every action in the crew collapsed to one variable throughput greater than 0. 0 meant the park regained its sight, picture meant the grid was updated, meant the kill cycle reset. Non-zero meant the enemy's eye was smeared by speed. The Germans divided attention among 3 demands: tighten the ring, stop the punch-through, preserve rear axes for manoeuvre. Without a corps-level schedule to harmonize a corridor the way the Americans did, the roadblocks ran on a company commander's feel and a slow answer from the rear. Fuel scarcity forced Panzer Lehr to choose between holding a node and manoeuvring to counterpunch. A skilled pack crew lost was not replaced. An American truck company could eat a loss and still have another behind it. A German lost gun was an irreplaceable exhibit in a shrinking museum. After the first breach at Assenois, the essential difference was how the Americans turned a trick into a routine. They did not treat the open door as a lucky snapshot. They treated it as a tempo to sustain. Each night that followed, with the sky closed and snow thickening the script re-ran. MPs set the boards. Engineers went ahead. Artillery put the canopy on schedule. Armour slid aside. The GMCs flowed. Crews needed no long talk. They heard the lines like machine noise. No halts. Door open, trucks through. Reroute Red. It became reflex in hands and ears, not a speech about courage. From distance, the contrast took an industrial shape. The Americans fought like an assembly line, slots, cadence, substitution, and quality control measured in time thresholds. The Germans fought like a gallery, each gun veteran crew, and can of fuel apiece not to be risked. The line accepted scrap to keep rhythm. The gallery avoided risk to keep its pieces, and in doing so lost the rhythm. Ask who took the greater risk, and the answer isn't in a shout on a turret or a perfect shot. It sits in the decision to drive a convoy under fire for 3 minutes, rather than wait 10 for safe. It sits in agreeing that if one serial falls, the next bites into the gap. It sits in valuing a flipped sign at the right minute as highly as a battery, and it resolves into a sentence as cold as a clock. America did not bet on a unit, it bet on a timetable. At 1650 on 26 December, the gate broke. A 26th Volksgrenadier Park 75mm flared, an American half-track burned, and the narrow road turned into a funnel of smoke. By siege law, this was the moment the American column should halt. German sights would close the eye, and pre-registered artillery would fall on the choke point. Instead, a dozer bit into the wreck for 30 or 40 seconds. The military police flipped the priority board, and a GMC driver heard 3 dense blasts from the 101st, like a clock opening the artillery umbrella, and pressed the pedal. The wheels never touched the 2-minute halt mark. No halts, an MP said flatly through a frozen scarf, his hand pushing the wooden arrow to the reserve lane. On the Mageret spur at dusk, an armoured feeler tried to slip through a low village and was locked by crossfire. Under the old script, such a pinned point would drag the whole chain behind it, creating a golden minute for German guns. On the net, a short order cut in Reroute Red. The signboard at the previous node was already waiting. The resupply column swung off while the front wheels were still sliding on ice. No cue, no broken rhythm. The myth survives on pauses. Tonight, the pause vanished. In a garden by the road, a PA crew heaved the barrel toward a secondary position. The section leader waited for American engines to stumble so he could call artillery, but the cadence did not break. Headlights smeared like water, never gathering into a fixed dot. A Panzerfaust team at a window took a short sweep of coax fire. When they lifted again, the column had moved past the firing angle. "No more eye," the gunner muttered, eyes stinging where sleet beat the naked glass. They had not lost a battle. They had lost the formula. Meanwhile, in the lead tank's turret, First Lieutenant Charles Bogus ran the 3 steps he knew by heart: identify, acquire fire, relocate. The turret slid a notch, the gun came off the centre line, so crates of 105mm could skim past the track. A jerrycan thumped on the bed of the truck behind raw fuel, biting the nose. No one talked much, only clipped fragments. Door open, trucks through, armour step back. From here on, the crew's performance was not measured in enemy knocked out, but in holding one variable throughput greater than 0. In the 101st's FDC bunker, a lieutenant read the updated grid and closed the order. Time on target, 2 minutes fire. 3 shocks hammered a GMC's windshield a few hundred meters away. The driver understood this language better than any speech. If he slipped through within the 2-minute umbrella, the town gained another hour of life. If he stood a full 120 seconds at a node, the German battery would arrive. He watched the wooden board in the MP's hands, the red arrow pointing to the right spur. His right foot grew heavier. The Germans shifted from hunting the stream to avoiding the artillery window. At a wood edge post, a squad leader pulled his men back from the village mouth, because each time he spread the sight picture, the smoke of American guns poured over the node, and the convoy never made a dead spot. In the rear, Panzer Lehr weighed, holding a node against manoeuvring for a counterpunch when fuel allowed only one option. Every paquet, every seasoned crew, turned into a hard-to-replace exhibit. Risking them to stop the flow meant trading away something that could not be restored. The caution was not weakness. It was logic under scarcity. But it no longer matched an opponent who had put the road on a schedule. On the American side, every crossroads took on the shape of a field workshop. MPs acted like shift foremen, counting the beat of vehicles and flipping the board when the net called node hot. Engineers and dozers were the maintenance crew of the line. A burning hull was scrapped to be kicked off the belt in 40 seconds. Artillery was the roof set by the clock, a 2-minute TOT opening exactly as each serial reached the door. Armour opened the door, then stood aside so the workers' GMCs could pass. None of them called it a new tactic. They were just working their shift. Before this, the Germans waited for the column to stop, cut it, and called massed fire. Afterward, they were dragged off, positions scattered to survive, and lost the power to choose the moment. Before this, the Americans broke through when opportunity showed. Afterward, they maintained a timetable serial TOT reroute. The change sounded more like office work than battlefield, and that is exactly why it struck at the root of a myth. Encirclement no longer turned an enemy into a starving garrison. It became a chase against someone else's clock. Late on 27 December, wind whipped the corridor tight as a string. On the radio, the clipped cold lines continued, corridor narrow, hold the road. An MP wiped salt from his gloves, swung the board to the reserve spur, and waved the next serial through. At the wood's edge, a park crew breathed smoke and listened as American engines faded without a break. There was no triumphant cheer. Only a new understanding, standing silent in the ice. After that day, the siege no longer starved the town. The timetable fed it. On the night of 26-27 December, the traffic kept flowing through Assenois like an assembly line. Crates of 105 Metum shells, fuel cans, stretchers and radio batteries reached the 101st on a set schedule, not by luck. 4th Armoured held the corridor's edges, rotating spearheads and shifting anchor points, so they didn't become the choke point themselves. On the icy road, MPs stood at TCPs with standardized priority boards, a red arrow for Assenois pre-marked reserve spurs, and the clipped order, no halts. Engineers and dozers led the column. Wherever a wreck blocked the crown, the blade shoved it off in under a minute, leaving a one-vehicle lane for GMCs to slip past. In the FDC bunker, the fire grid updated by the hour. Time on target 2 minutes became the rhythm. Open the umbrella, then close it as the last serial cleared. The evidence spread through dry documents. 4th Armoured and the 37th Tank Battalion's after-action reports logged the link-up with the 101st at Assenois, and the method open the door, give the lane shift position. The 101st's unit diaries ticked off ammunition and casualty resupply by the hour. Corps-level traffic diagrams drew the TCPs and the reroute matrix. In MP notebooks, no halts and Reroute Red appeared as standards, no longer improvisations. Behavior on both sides shifted within the week. The Americans treated every crossroads like a field workshop. MPs kept time, engineers and dozers maintained the belt artillery was the roof armour, opened the door and slid aside. The fear of being throttled didn't vanish. It became a procedure measured in minutes. The Germans hunted less directly. Wood edge posts switched to short harassment, prioritised preserving packs and veteran crews, and avoided the artillery window when they heard the convoy's cadence hold steady. Panzer Lehr weighed every litre of fuel between holding a node and manoeuvring a counterpunch, often pulling back from village mouths before the taut rhythm crashed down. In the year's final days, when the sky opened now and then, the road stopped being a destination and became a schedule to keep. GMC drivers treated 120 seconds of standstill as taboo, just as gunners treated 2 minutes of TOT as a precious spend that had to be placed exactly on the node. Small details, a sign flipped at the right second, a dozer pass cutting a lane, a clipped order on the net, paid back what the big things lacked: low ceiling, hard ice, scarce fuel. Questions for the audience remain inside this episode's myth. If the TOT-TCP schedule had appeared 6 weeks earlier, would encirclement in the Ardennes still have carried deterrent power? Is a well-sighted paquet truly better when the opponent never gives you a pause? What is more frightening to a defensive crew, a heavy tank or a timetable kept to the minute? We'll carry that cadence into the next episode, when the ideal Panther, the German medium they thought perfectly balanced, enters narrow streets, short firing lanes, and meets a rival that sounds cheap but proves relentless. The Sherman that moves by schedule, not by impulse. They planned to starve a crossroads. The Americans scheduled a lifeline.